Emily Parker stood at the window of her apartment, the morning sun spilling over the skyline of New York City, and felt as if the world had finally tilted in her favor. Today, in just a few hours, she would marry Ryan Cooper, the man she had loved with her whole heart, the man who made her feel seen, cherished, and alive. Her reflection in the glass smiled back at her, the sparkling engagement ring on her finger catching the light like a promise. Everything about her life at this moment seemed perfect, untouchable. Ryan was the embodiment of charm and devotion. Every morning he sent her flowers to her office, whispered compliments that made her blush in public, and had an uncanny ability to remember the smallest details about her, how she liked her coffee, which songs she hummed under her breath, and even the way she twirled her hair when she was nervous. Friends often joked that he was too perfect to be real, but Emily never questioned it. She felt secure, confident that she had found her forever. And yet, there was Victoria Cooper, Ryan's mother, a woman of sharp elegance and sharper opinions, who had made her presence known in subtle but unmistakable ways. At first, Emily had brushed it off as harmless interference. A suggestion here, a preference there. Victoria's insistence on certain flowers, on the exact shade of bridesmaids, dresses, on who should sit where at the rehearsal dinner. "She just cares," Ryan would say, kissing Emily's temple with that disarming smile. "It's nothing to worry about." But Victoria's presence had an edge that gnawed at Emily in quiet, almost imperceptible moments. The way her eyes lingered a second too long when Emily spoke, the faintly smug tilt of her head when she suggested a minor change to the wedding plan, the little sighs that seemed aimed at Emily alone. Every time, Emily told herself it was overthinking, her imagination, fueled by too many romantic dramas and cautionary tales about controlling mothers-in-law. This morning, as Emily packed her small overnight bag for the bridal suite, her heart thrummed with excitement, but underneath, a flicker of unease lingered. She glanced at the invitation suite laid neatly on the counter, the last-minute details scribbled in perfect handwriting. Victoria's signature had touched nearly every envelope, every note. "She's just trying to help," Emily whispered to herself, attempting to banish the prickling sensation that something was off. Ryan appeared in the doorway, his usual grin lighting up the room. He wrapped her in a warm embrace and whispered, "Ready to be mine forever?" Emily laughed, letting herself be swept into the euphoria, but as she looked over his shoulder, she caught a glimpse of Victoria's reflection in the mirror behind him. Victoria's eyes were sharp, assessing, almost calculating. Emily shook her head, forcing a smile. She would not let suspicion taint this day, not when love had finally brought her to the altar. Little did Emily know, this seemingly perfect beginning was merely the calm before a storm that would challenge everything she thought she knew about love, loyalty, and the family she was about to marry into. The days leading up to the wedding had been a whirlwind of excitement, but Emily could feel a subtle tension creeping into the air. Victoria Cooper, Ryan's mother, had taken on a new intensity in her helpful role. At first, it seemed like ordinary mother-of-the-groom enthusiasm, checking on the flowers, suggesting minor tweaks to the menu, approving the seating chart, but slowly, Emily began noticing the tiny manipulations threaded through every decision. The first sign came with the florist. Emily had selected a soft blush rose arrangement for the centerpieces, envisioning romantic, delicate bouquets that matched her vision. But Victoria had quietly called the florist behind Emily's back and insisted on ivory lilies instead, claiming they better reflected the Cooper legacy. Emily's protests were met with Ryan's familiar, placating smile. "Mom just wants the day to be perfect," he said. Emily tried to brush it off, telling herself she was being overly sensitive. Then came the seating chart. Emily had spent hours arranging family and friends so that everyone would feel comfortable, creating a balance between her side and Ryan's. But when she reviewed the finalized chart, subtle changes leapt out. Her oldest friends were pushed to the far corner, while distant acquaintances were given prime spots near the head table. When she questioned Ryan, he chuckled nervously. "She just thinks everyone should feel included," he said. Yet Emily couldn't ignore the sting of exclusion, or the quiet satisfaction she imagined in Victoria's eyes. Even the bridal rehearsal became a stage for Victoria's quiet control. She insisted on dictating every line, every gesture, every procession. When Emily tried to voice her opinion, Victoria smiled, that disarming maternal smile that masked a sharper edge beneath. "Darling, I just know what will look best," she said. And Emily, unwilling to cause a scene on what was supposed to be one of the happiest weeks of her life, nodded, forcing herself to accept the compromise. The whispers of tension weren't just about control, they were personal. Victoria had begun complimenting Emily in a way that felt almost condescending, noting her dress choices, her posture, even the way she laughed. "So sweet, isn't it?" Victoria would murmur, her tone dripping with false warmth. Emily laughed nervously, but inwardly felt the cold twinge of being measured, evaluated, and found subtly wanting. Ryan, for his part, remained blissfully unaware, or perhaps deliberately blind, to the creeping storm. He still smiled, still kissed Emily on the cheek with that easy charm, and still whispered reassurances. But Emily could feel a fissure forming, a slow fracture between her vision of a fairy tale wedding and the reality of the Coopers' influence. And beneath the polite smiles, the carefully crafted excuses, Emily sensed a more dangerous truth, that Victoria was not merely overexcited, but methodical, precise, and quietly testing the boundaries of control. The wedding was supposed to be a celebration of love, but Emily couldn't shake the feeling that, in Victoria's mind, it was already a battle she was destined to lose. Emily had convinced herself that she could weather Victoria's subtle manipulations. After all, she was marrying Ryan, the man who loved her, who always seemed to know what she needed. But a single phone call shattered that fragile confidence. It was from the bridal boutique. "Mrs. Parker?" The voice on the other end began cheerfully. "We just wanted to confirm your fitting tomorrow, and, we have a second dress here that's identical to yours." Emily froze. "Excuse me?" Her grip tightened on the phone. "Yes," the assistant continued, oblivious to the tension she had just caused. "It's the same designer, same style, same fabric. Someone requested it just yesterday." Her mind raced. Who would do this?" The assistant paused. "It was listed under Victoria Cooper." She wanted to ensure she had the same dress as the bride, just in case. Emily hung up, her stomach twisting. At first, she laughed nervously, imagining the absurdity of it all. Victoria, trying to match her dress? Surely it was a joke, or maybe just a misguided attempt at showing solidarity. But deep down, a cold seed of fear took root. This wasn't solidarity. It was mimicry, a subtle, deliberate way to blur boundaries, to stake a claim in the moment that was supposed to be hers alone. She stared at her reflection in the mirror, the ivory fabric of her gown glinting softly in the light. How could a dress, so intimately tied to her identity as a bride, be duplicated by the very woman who should have been welcoming her into the family? The thought was suffocating. Her heart pounded not with excitement, but with dread. When Ryan arrived at her apartment later that evening, Emily tried to mask her unease with a smile. "So, funny story, the boutique called, Mom ordered the same dress." Ryan froze, his brows knitting together. "What? That can't be—" "She did," Emily interrupted, voice trembling slightly. "Can you imagine? It's like she wants to replace me, or, I don't even know. I don't understand why she would do something like this." Ryan exhaled, attempting to reassure her. Come on, Mom's just excited. She's over-enthusiastic, that's all. She probably thinks it'll be fun, you know." Emily wanted to believe him. She really did. But as she watched him speak, a flicker of doubt crossed her mind. Ryan loved her, yes, but had he really been aware of all the subtle ways Victoria had been inserting herself into their wedding? Or had he in some way been complicit in letting her mother test the waters? That night, Emily lay awake, haunted by the image of Victoria wearing the same gown she had spent months dreaming about. It wasn't just a dress, it was a statement, a silent claim, a shadow looming over the joy she had envisioned for herself. For the first time, Emily understood. Victoria wasn't merely a meddling mother-in-law. She was a force, precise and calculated, and Emily's perfect beginning was already under siege. The battle for her wedding and for her identity had quietly begun. The morning of the wedding arrived with a deceptive calm. The sun streamed through the windows of the bridal suite, painting everything in a golden glow, but Emily's chest tightened with an unfamiliar tension. She had been excited for this day for months, yet a gnawing unease lingered beneath her carefully maintained composure. Victoria's subtle manipulations had already escalated into something far more unnerving, and Emily sensed that the line between, quote, helpful mother of the groom and outright sabotage was disappearing fast. Emily's first warning came when she opened the wedding programs, neatly stacked on the vanity. Her name, Emily Parker, the bride, was missing from the front, replaced instead with a flourish of Victoria's name in bold script, Mrs. Cooper. Her fingers trembled as she rifled through the pages, realizing that even the roles of bridesmaids and groomsmen had been quietly rearranged to favor Victoria's preferred guests. Panic prickled in her stomach. She called Ryan, her voice barely above a whisper. "Did you see this?" Ryan's response was calm, almost too calm. "Mom's just excited, Em, it's fine. Don't let it ruin your morning." Emily wanted to scream, but she swallowed the words. He didn't understand, not yet, that this was no harmless oversight. Next came the photographer, who seemed unusually eager to follow Victoria around, capturing her every move with a scrutinizing lens. Emily approached him, trying to assert some control. "Please, focus on me, I'm the bride." The photographer smiled awkwardly. "Of course, but..." Victoria insisted she get some close-up shots first, just for her personal album. Emily's pulse quickened. This was no longer just interference. It was an orchestrated effort to eclipse her presence, to insert Victoria into every frame of the day that should have celebrated Emily. Even the officiant seemed caught in the web. He hesitated when Emily approached him with last-minute confirmations, glancing nervously toward Victoria, as if seeking her approval before responding. Every element of the ceremony had been quietly redirected, and Emily realized with a sinking heart that Victoria's influence had stretched farther than she had imagined. Her hands shook as she paced the suite. She couldn't ignore it anymore. Victoria's obsession had crossed a line. This wasn't just controlling behavior. It was a declaration, a statement that the mother-in-law would not simply play a supporting role. She wanted to dominate, to overshadow, perhaps even to replace Emily entirely. Emily's phone buzzed. A message from Ryan. "See you at the altar, love." She stared at the words, heart in her throat. Could Ryan really be blind to what his mother had orchestrated? Or was he, too, entangled in her meticulous schemes? The day that was supposed to be the happiest of Emily's life had transformed into a tense battlefield. Every smile she forced, every laugh she faked, was a fragile mask over the fear creeping through her veins. Somewhere beneath the silk and roses, Emily realized that the perfect wedding she had dreamed of was no longer hers alone. It had already been infiltrated, and the real challenge was just beginning. The moment Emily stepped through the grand double doors of the ceremony hall, her heart should have soared. The chandeliers sparkled like a constellation above the guests, the scent of roses and lilies filled the air, and the soft hum of anticipation was almost tangible. But the sight that met her eyes froze her in place. Victoria Cooper stood at the altar. Veil lowered, hands delicately clasped. She wore a gown that mirrored Emily's own almost perfectly, the ivory fabric flowing, the lace detailing exquisite. And beside her, Ryan stood, silent, eyes locked on Victoria with an expression that made Emily's blood run cold. He did not look surprised. He did not move to stop it. Shock rippled through Emily as whispers fluttered among the guests. She blinked, unable to comprehend how her wedding had transformed into something unrecognizable. "Ryan?" Her voice trembled, carrying over the murmurs. Ryan's lips parted, hesitation written in every line of his face. "Emily, I..." Victoria's smile was serene, almost smug. "Darling, you look beautiful," she purred, her eyes flicking toward Emily with an almost predatory satisfaction. "I thought it might be fun to share the spotlight." Emily's knees threatened to buckle. The hall felt suddenly smaller, suffocating. She wanted to scream, to demand an explanation, to pull Ryan aside and force him to see what was happening. But a paralyzing doubt gripped her. Was Ryan truly unaware of his mother's plan? Or had he, somehow, allowed this moment to unfold? The officiant shifted uncomfortably, glancing at both women. A low murmur spread through the crowd. Emily felt the heat of humiliation and rage surge through her chest. Every dream she had cherished about this day, the laughter, the vows, the sense of being celebrated, had been eclipsed by Victoria's audacious display. "Mom, this is insane." Emily finally cried, stepping forward, voice sharp enough to cut through the stunned silence. "Get out of my wedding!" Victoria's eyes sparkled with a calm, chilling amusement. "Emily, darling, don't be so dramatic. It's all in good fun. Ryan and I are just sharing a special moment." Emily's gaze snapped to Ryan. He looked torn, a shadow of conflict flickering across his face, but he remained rooted to the spot. Was he paralyzed by fear, guilt, or loyalty to his mother? For the first time, Emily realized that this wasn't merely about a wedding. This was about power, control, and a meticulously woven pattern that had trapped Ryan long before she had ever met him. Her perfect beginning, her anticipated joy, it had all been infiltrated by a woman who refused to relinquish dominance and a man who seemed unable or unwilling to confront it. Emily drew a deep breath, summoning the courage that had carried her this far. The crowd waited, the air thick with tension, and the moment hung suspended, poised on the knife edge of betrayal and revelation. She had a choice: crumble under Victoria's shadow, or stand and fight for the life, love, and identity that were rightfully hers. The hall seemed to hold its breath. The ultimate betrayal was no longer a possibility, it was happening. Emily fled the ceremony hall in a haze of humiliation, her heart pounding against her ribs like a war drum. The whispers of the guests followed her down the corridor, each murmur another knife in her back. She had envisioned walking into that room as a radiant bride, yet she had been met with her future mother-in-law draped in the same gown, standing smugly at Ryan's side. It felt less like a wedding, and more like a public execution of her dignity. She stumbled into the Cooper Estates library, a cavernous room lined with shelves of leather-bound books and photographs of Ryan's family. She pressed her palms against the polished mahogany desk, fighting for breath. Rage burned within her, but beneath it was a deeper ache. Doubt. Was Ryan truly blindsided, or had he been silently complicit? Her gaze drifted to a framed photograph of Ryan's late father, William Cooper. His stern but kind eyes stared back at her, as though pleading with her to look deeper, to see beyond the spectacle. Something inside Emily urged her to search. She pulled open the desk drawers, rifling past pens and correspondence until her hand brushed against an envelope tucked beneath a stack of old invoices. It was sealed in heavy parchment, her name scrawled faintly across the front. Her breath hitched as she tore it open. The letter was written in William's careful handwriting. "If you are reading this, then perhaps the truth has already begun to reveal itself. My son has always been tender-hearted, too easily swayed by the woman who raised him. Victoria loves fiercely, but her love is tainted by possession. She has never allowed Ryan to truly be free. Every relationship he has ever attempted, she has found a way to sabotage. Lies whispered in the right ears. Friends quietly turned against the women he cared for. I fear he will never escape her shadow unless someone has the courage to fight for him." Emily's hands shook as she read the damning words. The puzzle pieces began to lock into place. The mysteriously broken engagements Ryan had mentioned, the evasive way he spoke of past girlfriends, the hollow look in his eyes whenever his mother's name came up. It had all been orchestrated. A chill swept through Emily as she realized the magnitude of what she faced. This wasn't simply jealousy or meddling. Victoria had spent years constructing a web of control, ensuring Ryan remained tethered to her, incapable of building a life with another woman. And now Emily was caught in the same trap, expected to surrender her identity or be destroyed. Footsteps echoed outside the library door. Emily quickly folded the letter, hiding it in the folds of her gown. The door creaked open and Victoria's voice drifted inside, sweet but sharp. "Emily, darling, where are you hiding? We still have a ceremony to finish." Emily's pulse raced. She knew now what Victoria was capable of, and that exposing the truth was the only way forward. But could Ryan handle the knowledge that his mother had been poisoning his life all along? The library fell silent again, but Emily's decision was made. She would not be another casualty of Victoria's obsession. She had a weapon now, the truth, and she intended to wield it. The reception hall buzzed with uneasy chatter. Guests whispered behind champagne flutes, eyes darting between Emily and Victoria like spectators at a prize fight. The air was charged, thick with anticipation, as though everyone sensed the collision that was about to unfold. Emily stood at the edge of the dance floor, the letter from William Cooper still hidden in her gown, its weight pressing against her ribs like a heartbeat. The truth she carried burned hotter than the humiliation she had suffered. This was no longer about a ruined wedding day. This was about her very identity, her right to exist as Ryan's partner without being swallowed by Victoria's suffocating control. Victoria swept into the center of the room, her gown shimmering under the chandeliers. She looked every bit the queen she believed herself to be, her smile sharp as glass. "Ladies and gentlemen," she began, her voice smooth, commanding, "what a wonderful celebration of love and family. Let's raise a toast." Emily's voice cut through the hall like a blade. "Stop!" The room fell silent. Every head turned. Ryan stiffened at the head table, his eyes locked on Emily, torn between concern and dread. Emily stepped forward, her hands trembling but her voice steady. "This isn't a celebration, this is a performance, and we've all been cast in Victoria's play." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Victoria's smile faltered, but she quickly recovered, her tone dripping with mock concern. "Darling, you're upset. It's understandable. The nerves of the day." "Don't patronize me," Emily snapped, her eyes flashing. "This isn't about nerves. This is about years of manipulation. About how you've controlled Ryan, destroyed every relationship he's ever had, and tried to erase me from my own wedding." Murmurs erupted. Some guests exchanged uneasy glances, others leaned forward, hungry for drama. Victoria's composure cracked, her eyes narrowing. "How dare you accuse me in front of my family?" Emily reached into her gown and pulled out the folded letter, holding it high. "This is from William, your husband, Ryan's father. He knew. He wrote about how you sabotaged every woman Ryan ever cared for. He begged for someone to break the cycle." A stunned silence descended. Ryan's face drained of color as Emily handed him the letter. His hands shook as he unfolded it, his eyes darting across the words. The room seemed to hold its breath. Victoria stepped forward, her mask of elegance slipping into desperation. "Ryan, don't believe this. Your father never understood us. He resented me. He twisted everything." But Ryan's eyes brimmed with pain. He clutched the letter, torn between loyalty and betrayal. Emily locked her gaze on Victoria. "You can't erase me. You can't rewrite this day to make it yours. I won't let you." The silence shattered into chaos. Guests murmuring, the band faltering mid-song, Ryan trembling with indecision. Victoria's control had finally been dragged into the light, but the question remained. Would Ryan choose truth and freedom, or retreat into his mother's web of lies? The battle lines had been drawn, and Emily for the first time stood unflinching on her side of them. The letter shook in Ryan's hands like a live wire, its words searing into his mind. Around him, the reception dissolved into a sea of whispers, curious stares, and the distant clinking of glasses, but he heard none of it. His world had narrowed to two women, his fiancé, standing tall and unyielding, and his mother, whose carefully constructed mask now cracked at the edges. "Ryan," Emily urged, her voice low but fierce, "you've seen the truth. You can't let her keep controlling you. Not anymore." Victoria moved closer, her hand brushing his arm, her voice dripping with velvet poison. "Sweetheart, don't let her manipulate you. Your father never understood me. He wrote lies because he wanted to weaken what we had. Don't forget who has always been there for you." The words struck like chains, heavy and familiar. Memories clawed at Ryan, his high school girlfriend who mysteriously moved away after Victoria's tearful warnings, his college love who vanished after a cruel rumor spread through their circle, the subtle guilt trips, the endless reminders that no one will ever love you like your mother does. He stared at Emily, radiant even in her fury, her gown rumpled from the chaos but her spirit blazing. She represented freedom, a life beyond suffocating control. But with that freedom came fear, the unknown, the risk of severing ties with the woman who had shaped his world, for better or worse. "I don't know what to believe," Ryan whispered, his voice cracking. "You both want me to choose, but I feel like no matter what I do, I'll lose someone I love." Emily's eyes softened, though her resolve never wavered. "Ryan, This isn't about choosing between us, it's about choosing yourself. Your father saw it, and deep down, you've always known. She's not protecting you. She's keeping you caged." Victoria bristled, her tone rising with desperation. "Don't listen to her. She wants to turn you against your own blood, your own family. Without me, Ryan, where would you be? Who would you be?" The crowd watched with rapt attention, caught between sympathy and scandal. The tension thickened when an uncle cleared his throat and muttered, "There's more to this than we ever knew." Old family secrets, inheritance disputes, and whispered rivalries flickered beneath the surface, ready to erupt. Ryan pressed the letter to his chest, torn open by the conflict. The man he longed to be, the man Emily believed he could become, was within reach. But so was the terrified boy who had always obeyed his mother's commands. His breath came ragged, his decision hovering like a guillotine blade. One path promised liberation but risked shattering his family forever. The other promised loyalty but condemned him to a lifetime of shadows. "Ryan," Emily whispered, tears glinting in her eyes, "please, don't let her take this from us." Victoria's voice cut like steel. "If you walk away from me, you walk away from everything. The Cooper legacy, your inheritance, your name." The room froze. Ryan's choice would not just define his future. It would decide the fate of everyone tangled in the web of Cooper secrets. And in that agonizing pause, the cliffhanger deepened. Which love would he choose? The love that freed him, or the love that bound him? The reception was a battlefield disguised in lace and crystal. Guests sat stiffly at their tables, sipping champagne that no longer tasted sweet, waiting for the next explosion. Emily kept her chin lifted, her hand clutching Ryan's like a lifeline, though his fingers trembled in hers. Across the room, Victoria Cooper moved with icy grace, her eyes sharp, calculating, already plotting her next move. Emily knew the fight wasn't over. Victoria wasn't the type of woman to bow out gracefully, not after being exposed. But even Emily couldn't anticipate the lengths Victoria was willing to go. It began with the microphone. One moment, the band was about to strike up a celebratory song. The next, Victoria's voice rang out over the speakers, smooth and commanding. "Ladies and gentlemen," she began, her tone honeyed with false warmth, "I think it's time the truth came out. You all deserve to know the kind of woman my son has chosen to marry." Gasps echoed. Emily's blood ran cold. Victoria pulled out a small stack of papers, dramatically fanning them like a deck of cards. "These," she announced, "are messages between Emily and a former lover. Passionate, explicit messages. Proof that she is not the innocent bride she pretends to be." Emily's heart stopped. She hadn't written anything like that. The guests murmured, scandal sparking in their eyes. Ryan's grip on her hand faltered. "They're forgeries," Emily snapped, her voice carrying above the noise. "She's lying! She made this up!" Victoria smirked, waving the papers for all to see. "Oh, darling, you can claim forgery all you want, but what will people remember? The accusations? Or your denials?" Ryan looked torn apart, his face pale as he stared at the pages in his mother's hands. "Mom, what have you done?" Victoria's voice turned shrill. "What I've done is protect you. This woman will ruin you, Ryan, just like the others. I warned your father, but no one listens. So I had no choice but to show everyone who she really is." Emily felt the room closing in, the judgmental eyes of friends, colleagues, even distant relatives pressing down on her. But then, like lightning, a thought struck her. She had seen those messages before, not in her own phone, but in a discarded file folder in Victoria's study. The dates, the phrasing, Victoria had fabricated them, cutting and pasting from old conversations Ryan himself had once had with someone else. Summoning every ounce of courage, Emily stepped forward, her voice steady and sharp. "You forged those messages. I've seen the originals in your office. You used Ryan's past against him, twisted it into a lie about me. That's who you are, Victoria. So desperate to control your son that you'll destroy anyone in your path, even if it means lying in front of everyone here." The crowd erupted, half in shock, half in outrage. Victoria's face drained of color, then flushed scarlet. The guests now turned, whispering furiously, some glaring at Victoria with newfound suspicion. Her plan to humiliate Emily had begun to unravel before her eyes. Ryan looked between his mother and his fiancé, the weight of the moment pressing him to the brink. The scheme had been exposed, but so had his own silence, his years of complicity. And as the tension reached a fever pitch, one truth remained: Victoria wasn't finished. Her empire of control was crumbling, but a woman like her wouldn't go down without a final strike. The ballroom felt like it was suspended in time, the chandeliers flickering as though they too were holding their breath. Victoria's forged evidence lay scattered across the floor where Emily had thrown it down, the damning letter from William clutched in Ryan's shaking hand. Guests whispered furiously, their champagne flutes untouched, their eyes darting between the three figures at the center of the storm. Emily stood tall, despite the tears threatening to spill, her gown wrinkled and smudged from the chaos, but her voice rang with steel. "This is it, Ryan. You can't keep standing in the middle. You either break free, or you let her take everything from us. From you." Victoria's heels clicked sharply against the marble as she advanced, her voice venomous but desperate. "Don't let her poison you against me? Everything I've ever done, every sacrifice was for you. Without me, you'd be nothing. I've built this life for you, Ryan, and now she wants to tear it all down." Ryan's hands clenched around the letter. "Mom, you lied. You forged messages. You humiliated Emily in front of everyone, and Dad, he knew. He warned me." His voice cracked as he read aloud a line from the letter. "She will never let you live your own life if you don't cut the cord." Gasps echoed through the room. Victoria staggered as though struck, her mask of control shattering. "Your father was weak," she spat, her voice trembling. "He didn't understand us. But you're mine. You always will be." Emily's heart broke as she watched Ryan tremble. He was still that boy caught between devotion and fear, but now the truth was undeniable. She stepped closer, her voice softening. "Ryan, look at me. You told me once you wanted a family of your own, a life that was yours. That's what I want too. But we can't build that life if your mother controls every choice we make. You have to decide. Not for me. For yourself." The room went silent. Even the band had stopped, their instruments resting like abandoned weapons. Ryan closed his eyes, tears spilling down his cheeks. When he opened them, the conflict was still there, but so was something new. Resolve. He turned to his mother, his voice shaking but firm. "I love you, Mom, but I can't be your prisoner anymore." Victoria's face crumpled, devastation flashing before she masked it with rage. "You'll regret this. You'll regret choosing her over your own blood." Ryan took Emily's hand, pulling her close. The crowd erupted, some in applause, some in horrified murmurs, as Victoria stormed out, her heels striking the marble like war drums. Emily rested her forehead against Ryan's, relief flooding her chest, but her smile was bittersweet. They had won the battle, but the war with Victoria was far from over. Her shadow loomed, promising revenge, ensuring that peace would always be fragile. And as the final toast was raised to the couple who had survived the most scandalous wedding in the Cooper family's history, the audience was left with one searing question. Would Emily and Ryan's love be strong enough to withstand the storm Victoria had vowed to bring? The curtain fell on the night with no easy answers, only the haunting promise of more secrets, more battles, and the lingering taste of betrayal.